I told the state that I thought I suspected that there may be an inmate in the jail who was influencing Mr. Tenon, and that it could have been that a co-defendant had gotten to him. That's my suggestion.
Do you have information that's true?
No.
Was that just speculation of you doing this kind of work for decades?
It was me trying to figure out why my client had surprised me in court.
The alleged hitman at the center of what police in Florida are calling a sinister murder-for-hire plot may have just said in open court that his testimony was false. Now, the attorneys for the people accused of hiring him are crying foul, saying the court needs to investigate what exactly this accused hitman meant and whether that has any impact on their clients' cases. We are going to dig into the latest court motions and hearings in the killing of Jared Bridegan. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Henry Tenon, now 64 years old, allegedly admitted to police that he killed Jared Bridegan, a Florida Microsoft executive, back in 2022. But now, it seems he is trying to say things didn't happen the way police believe, which has put an entirely unpredictable wrench in this story. Because let's go back to this. We have 33-year-old father Jared Bridegan, really sad case, just dropped off his twins that he shared with his ex-wife Shanna Gardner at her home in Jacksonville Beach on February 16, 2022. He was on his way home with his daughter from his current marriage in the backseat of the SUV when he comes across a tire in the road. This is according to authorities. So he allegedly gets out to move the tire, and that is when he's gunned down, shot multiple times, left for dead in the road. People driving by spotted him, called 911. Police paperwork states, quote, other than the murderer and the victim, the only other witness to the murder was Bridegan's 2-year-old daughter, who told Child Protection Team investigators that a man came up to the car, she heard boom, 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 and then Daddy hit the ground. How heartbreaking is that? Now, without context, Bridegan's murder appears to be completely random. He wasn't armed, there's no evidence of a struggle. His belongings, like his wristwatch, his wedding ring, his phone, his money, his wallet, none of that was taken. His truck wasn't stolen. Bridegan's daughter was unharmed. But this brazen murder, maybe not surprisingly, made headlines all over the country. And then Bridegan's current wife, Kirsten, reportedly encouraged police to look into Bridegan's ex, Shanna Gardner, and her new husband, Mario Fernandez-Saldana. This is according to reporting from local affiliate WJAX. So going back to Henry Tenon, according to authorities, he was a tenant in a property owned by Fernandez-Saldana. Now you're starting to see the connection. And investigators believe Fernandez-Saldana hired Tenon to commit the murder, allegedly using money from Gardner's trust fund account. And police say Tenon's truck was seen on surveillance video, security video, near the crime scene around when Bridegan was ambushed. They got a warrant for his bank and phone records, discovering that Tenon and Fernandez-Saldana apparently communicated 35 times in February. Authorities also say Fernandez-Saldana wrote 3 checks to Tenon months after the killing. Tell me a story like this doesn't just scare you about the world, right? And I'll tell you what, we try to partner with sponsors who can maybe offer a little bit of protection to your lives. So with that in mind, let me tell you about Delete Me. I don't know if you know this, but apparently your personal data is being harvested and sold online by data brokers. Yeah, anyone can buy your personal information. When that happens, you're at risk for a whole host of things. Identity theft, becoming a target of phishing scams, potentially stalking, but that is why I'm so happy to tell you about our sponsor, Delete Me. So Delete Me helps keep your personal information private. My information was all these different listings. Dozens of data brokers had my information, but Delete Me jumped in. And by the way, they will keep monitoring the sites for you so your information doesn't find its way back on there after the first removal. And honestly, using Delete Me has given me a little bit of peace of mind about my family too, because if someone buys your data via data broker, they can see information about your relatives as well. So right now you can get 20% off Delete Me and protect your personal data when you go to joindeleteme.com/sidebar. Use promo code sidebar at checkout. So what happens? Officers, they end up pulling Tenon over for speeding in August of 2022. Turns out he's a habitual traffic offender, wasn't even supposed to be driving. So police arrest him, and they use the ruse of talking to him about his DUIs and revoked license to get him into an interrogation room. And that's when this happens.
You do not have to make a statement or say anything. Anything you say can be used against you in court. You have the right to talk to a lawyer for advice before you make a statement or before any questions are asked of you, and to have the lawyer with you during any questioning.
So the detectives show Tenon pictures of him driving all over town in different vehicles, with pictures snapped by license plate readers and other cameras.
So the car you're driving today, that's it was a Crown Vic, is that right? Mm-hmm. Same car you were in the other day when you were involved in the little fender bender? Correct. So I read the report on the fender bender, and it looked like you just made a mistake, kind of said, hey, I got nervous, drove off. I'm guessing...
Actually, I don't know what happened. I panicked. I'm like, oh, man, what? Then I went around the block, stopped, and sure enough...
Because you knew the police were coming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just stopped and just chilled out from right there. I thought I got my senses back together, just waited. I said, oh, I'm going to jail.
Because you knew
they're going to put you in impound.
Because you knew about your license, you shouldn't be driving. So you know that I know the answer to most of these questions I'm going to ask you. I'm trying to see what kind of man you are, if you're a man of character, and you're going to be straight with me, okay? Okay. Because I'm willing to work with those kind of people and willing to have a discussion with them about how we move forward.
And then the detectives also asked Tenon about a trip he took, or apparently took, to a tire shop. And police reports indicate that a tire matching the one in the road when Bridegan was shot was found at the home that Tenon was renting from Fernandez-Saldana. But it seems that Tenon tries to deflect.
You did something to the truck. You had to get something on it. You remember what it was? You went somewhere and bought a couple...
Third and Rookie.
That should tell you where you were with the truck. Tires? Tires?
I went out there to...
Value tire or something like that? Discount tire? Yeah. Get a couple tires put on it? Mm-hmm. You get flat or something?
No, it's just what?
Oh, okay.
After more than an hour of talking, the detectives start to let on that this is about more than just some traffic violations.
All right, Henry, so here's what's up. Today's the most important day of your life, all right? I'm gonna shoot you straight. You got some tough decisions to make, but there's really only one right answer. So we've told you a lot, but we haven't told you everything. And you've been pretty honest with us, and I appreciate that. But there's a lot more to this than what we've told you, what we've let on. So there's other people down here that we're interviewing at the same time about a case. It's way bigger than some traffic charges.
Yeah, I don't figure that much out already. Okay, I just don't know what.
Okay, well, you're going to know in a second. And these people, so this is a choice you get to make. You're at what they call a crossroads in your life, okay? There's two paths you can take. One goes this way, one goes this way. One can lead to Henry still being Henry out, living a life potentially one day, because we know what Henry's all about, and he's not somebody that's going around doing violent things, doing vicious things to people. But somehow Henry got caught up in something. You got put in the middle of something, and now it's spiraling out of control because these other people involved, because this is your vehicle involved that you're in, are going to point the finger at you. And they've already started to do that because no one wants to go to prison for the rest of their life. Nobody.
Now, parts of the interrogation are redacted or muted, so we don't know everything that Mr. Tenon said, but detectives did indicate they wanted to help him if they could.
But guess what we can't control? What's next?
Every day.
That's what we get to control, Henry. What's next? How am I remembered? How do I want to go out of this world? A man of character, a man who did what's right, or just some chump? Because that's what we're being played for right now, is chumps. We ain't no chumps, Henry. I know you ain't no chump. When I said respect, I meant it. I give you the same respect you give me. You've been respectful to me. I haven't raised my voice at you. Haven't you raised your voice at me? We've disagreed. We know we're not on the same page, but we both know we can get there.
So Tenon was in that interrogation room for reportedly 5 hours before he asked for an attorney and was taken to jail. And several months later, he was officially charged with murder in the second degree, conspiracy to commit murder, accessory after the fact, and child abuse, because Bridegan's young daughter was a witness to her own father's murder. She was there when this happened, this violent crime. Now, with respect to Fernandez-Saldana and Gardner, they face first-degree murder, solicitation, conspiracy, and child abuse charges themselves. Fernandez-Saldana was arrested first, then Gardner was arrested in Washington State because that's apparently where she moved with her children. She was extradited back to Florida. They were both denied bail. And we told you recently here on Sidebar, despite petitions from Bridegan's parents to gain custody of their grandchildren, that was actually denied. and Gardner's parents were given custodial rights. So going back to Tenon, he entered a plea agreement, pleaded guilty to one charge of murder in the second degree, according to court records. Prosecutors say he agreed to testify against Fernandez-Saldana, and Tenon would be sentenced after his co-defendants go to trial, and according to his plea agreement, he'll spend between 15 years to life in prison as a result of this. Or I should say, will he? Because that might be up in the air right now after some comments that Tenon apparently made at a recent court hearing. So news of a possible about-face exploded in the news last week when Gardner and Fernandez-Saldana's defense attorneys got a look at a transcript from a recent court appearance by Henry Tenon. It was a simple status conference where the judge and the attorneys make sure everyone's on the same page and the case is on track. But during that hearing, Tenon wasn't really supposed to speak, but he ended up addressing the court, managing to say that the testimony he'd given wasn't true. Now, this is apparently before the judge and Tenon's public defender had to quiet him down. Now, of course, when the defense attorneys for Tenon's co-defendants heard about this, they wanted more details. So they filed a motion with the Duval County Court that reads, quote, on March 15, 2023, Mr. Tenon provided a sworn statement in which he implicated Mr. Fernandez in the crimes for which he's been charged in this case. As of the filing of this motion, the March 15, 2023 sworn statement is the only testimony that has been made by Mr. Tenon provided to the defense. On February 1, 2025, the defense received an email from the state that contained a hyperlink to additional discovery. Upon downloading the material, defense counsel discovered the transcript of proceedings status hearing for State v. Henry Tenon on January 13, 2025. As contained in the attached transcript, Mr. Tenon, in no uncertain terms, informed the court that he wanted to bring the court's attention that his prior testimony was, quote, false testimony. Mr. Tenon goes on to request another attorney. No further action is taken by the court regarding this request by Mr. Tenon. The court addressed Mr. Tenon and told him that his case would be temporarily passed and he could speak with his lawyer in private, and the court will then have another conversation with Mr. Tenon. The court asked Mr. Tenon if that would be okay with him, and Mr. Tenon responded okay. The defense continues. Inexplicably, Mr. Tenon is never brought back out to the courtroom. He is never able to address the court, and his case is passed until January 22, 2025. On January 15, 2025, per an email from Judge Kite's judicial assistant, Mr. Tenon's case is passed nearly 3 months to April 14, 2025, meaning Mr. Tenon will not appear or have an opportunity to address the court for over 3 months since the time he informed the court he provided, quote, false testimony. Since the time Mr. Tenon has indicated that he has given false testimony, it has been over 3 weeks, and other than the transcript of the proceedings, the defense has been provided with no additional information. So let's take a look at that transcript from the court reporter at the quick hearing back in January, because it's pretty interesting. So Alan Chipperfield is Tenon's public defender, and in the transcript he says, quote, "Good morning, Your Honor. Alan Chipperfield for Mr. Tenon. Your Honor, I think we just need a pass date." The court responds, "I was just checking in because I hadn't seen Mr. Tenon since last year. I was just making sure everything was okay." Mr. Chipperfield responds, "I think he's doing okay." The court says, "Okay." And then Mr. Tenon says, "Your Honor, may I say something?" So the court responds, "Talk to Mr. Chipperfield first. Tell him what you want to tell me, okay?" And then Mr. Tenon responds, "I just want to bring your attention, my testimony." And the court says, No. Mr. Tenon says, "False testimony." The court says, "Hold on." Mr. Chipperfield jumps in, says, "Mr. Tenon, we need to talk about that." Mr. Tenon says, "I need another attorney." The court says, "Okay, let me pass it temporarily, have a conversation with Mr. Chipperfield, and then I'll have a conversation with you, Mr. Tenon, okay?" And Mr. Tenon responds, "Okay." Now, as the defense said, Tenon doesn't end up coming back into the courtroom that day. And the following day, the court gets an email from his attorney, Mr. Chipperfield, that says, "We have resolved the issue raised in court yesterday after a meeting with Mr. Tenon. Both parties request that the case be removed from the January 22nd calendar and set at least 60 days out for a pretrial. We don't expect there to be any action in the case until the co-defendants take Mr. Tenon's deposition." So if that's true, that this issue has been resolved, don't quite know what that conversation was with his attorney. We will not know. It's attorney-client privilege, but that's an interesting about-face in multiple ways. So the defense attorneys for Gardner and Fernandez-Saldana, they were understandably miffed by this latest development. I mean, the key witness now doing an about-face. And they believe that there should have been communication from the court about Tenon's apparent statement. So they demanded a hearing where one of the attorneys actually questioned Chipperfield about what happened.
Would you agree that you're a meticulous note taker?
Yes.
Do you have notes that reflect these conversations that you've talked about with the state and with the court?
Yes.
Did you review those notes before you came to court?
Yes, and I have them with me.
Okay. What, to your recollection, do you recall, other than telling the state that it could not be resolved today and that you wanted to pass it, what did you say specifically as to any more detail, and what is your recollection or notes as to their response or any other commentary they may have made to you?
I suggested that we have a meeting and not bring him back into court, pass the case. I told the state that I thought I suspected that there may be an inmate in the jail who was influencing Mr. Tenon, and that it could have been that a co-defendant had gotten to him. That's my suggestion.
Do you have information that's true?
No.
Was that just speculation of you doing this kind of work for decades?
It was me trying to figure out why my client had surprised me in court.
Because you brought it up, do you have any information now that your client was influenced?
No.
And at times, things got a little heated in that courtroom because each party, including the judge, appeared insulted at the idea that there could have been some kind of misconduct on their part.
What is the state?
The only thing I would suggest, and I will just make it part of the record.
She's asking me, Mr. Judge.
Well,
Can I?
yeah, sure.
Okay, what is it? Does the state want to respond to this, or do you need additional time?
We need no additional time to respond, Your Honor, other than, I guess, to inquire if the defense wants the actual email to our investigators bringing Mr. Tenon over to our office. Mr. Chipperfield has already indicated there was a meeting in our office. There was a meeting in our office. We have nothing else to disclose as to those paragraphs, other than there was probably an email ordering him from the jail over to our office on I think it's the 14th, the next day. And so we would, obviously it's proper for lawyers to talk to witnesses. That's an entirely proper thing, and normally not something that's discoverable, although based on everything, the state has no objection to discovering the fact that we did talk to Mr. Tenon and Mr. Chipperfield already testified to it. That's not an issue.
Okay.
There's nothing else that the state is discovering at this time.
All right.
So the defense is seeking various pieces of information, including any communication that might indicate what Tenon meant by false testimony, and if he could have been influenced by anyone inside or outside of that jail. A court appearance is actually scheduled for Wednesday. We're going to keep an eye on that. But for now, Tenon's next status hearing is scheduled for April. Fernandez-Saldana and Gardner are set to go to trial in October of this year. We'll see if that court date sticks. And I should tell you this, they face the death penalty if they're convicted. That's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please check us out. Please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.